Welcome to the May edition of the TalkingPointz Insider Reports Chats. This is our special monthly show to talk about the highlights of the Insider Report from last month, which was May, and we're recording it in June because June is going to be a very busy month. So we're just going to go back and talk about May. And Dave, you had the first time. Well, first joining us is Rob Arnold. Rob, introduce yourself to everybody. Where are you nowadays? Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Rob Arnold. I'm a senior research director of Frost & Sullivan's Connected Work research practice. We basically look at devices, software platforms that people use to collaborate around their work. I'm based outside of Atlanta.
We really appreciate you joining us for this conversation. Your insights will help us have a great conversation here. So, Dave, kick us off.
This is a new thing. We had Erwin Lazar last month from Metrigy, and we've had David Dungay on a few times from the media side. But I think it adds a lot. I like this format with a guest on here, and particularly one who is so up to date on all the news. So this is.
I'll try to fill those shoes. That's a tough act to follow.
And officially, welcome back. There was nothing more devastating in the industry to hear that Rob had left the analyst community, and I'm glad it was all a joke and all that stuff. All that stuff is, it's all fake, and you're right where we expected you to be, right at Frost & Sullivan the whole time. So
I was going to say, if you blink, you missed it, but I was going to avoid that to avoid the embarrassment.
No embarrassment. I took a quick hiatus to get a sanity check on the service provider side of the market.
Awesome. Go ahead, Dave. Bring up the first topic.
All right. Well, of course, it wouldn't be enterprise communications if we didn't talk about AI. So let's start off the conversation with AI. It was one of our first stories in the last Insider Report. We talked about a Gartner prediction. Gartner says that AI is set to become a net job creator by 2028. Thoughts on that, gentlemen?
Well, I've just published a piece, a small one, on LinkedIn, where I'm trying to acknowledge the fact that we're getting into a polarized situation around AI. There's a huge camp, which I'm assuming, Dave, you're in, and Rob, you're probably in as well, that thinks that AI is inevitable and it's barreling down, and the changes are happening faster than any other technological change. And why are people stupidly standing in the way of it? And we're completely oblivious to the fact that there's this huge groundswell of people thinking that it's taking away their jobs, and it's taking away society, and it's taking away creativity. And I have a very big fear that we're almost at the point with, torches and pitchforks around that. And that if we don't deal with this conflict between the two opposing sides that think the other one's out of their mind, we're going to have a very bumpy road going forward. And it may come to pitchforks and torches. So, I get Gartner's predictions and all the other analysts' predictions about why AI is fabulous and the changes that are coming down the pike every 3 minutes and 4 minutes. I have a feeling we're heading really fast toward a brick wall.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to kind of premise the conversation. I think it really depends on the application, right? If a lot of these jobs that are manual and repetitive, sure, that's probably not a good job anyways, right? In terms of career growth and satisfaction. But what our data show from our last survey coming up about a year ago now, we're refreshing it, but reducing operational costs was only about a 30 to 35% response rate from ITDMs saying that's why they're investing in AI. And in that bucket would be headcount, right? And workforce population. So really that ranked among the lower percentages of the benefits that the decision makers are expecting from their AI investments. So that right there is a good sign. And again, back to the application, what are you using it for? I was recently reading an article because I'm still stuck on fax, FAX or facsimile. We can't get rid of it. If you look at just in the healthcare industry, tens and tens of millions of faxes are sent every year. And the application there is to organize, index, and ensure receipt of faxes and the proper handling of faxes. That doesn't change the fact that someone either manually sends it or has to upload some kind of soft document and e-fax it. So that's not reducing headcount. That's an application that makes it better for that use case. So again, it depends on where you're applying the technology.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point there with that because David set it up as kind of, there's certainly AI is here, and whether it's creating or destroying jobs is a conversation. Whether AI is good, which is what David was talking about with the pitchforks, is another conversation.
Yeah.
Uh, it doesn't really matter. AI is here, and it's not going to go away, and it's probably going to get a lot bigger, or I think it's going to get a lot bigger. Whether it's good or not, I mean, we always have that debate. We had that debate about electricity. We had it about internet. We had it about the cloud. There's always resistance to change. There's always trepidation. There's always fear of the unknown. Whether things are good or not, I actually, in my conversation with Jeff Lawson recently, from I did with the co-founder of Twilio, he said in there that the internet was a bad thing, that we're not
Yep.
happier, and so it doesn't matter whether it's a good thing or bad thing. It's here, and it ain't going away. We can't change that. I think the idea that the Gartner is putting out here that by 2028 it'll be a job creator. I think that took some courage,
Mhm.
because Gartner's kind of slow, so for them to come out with that last month meant that they've been working on it for a few months, and it takes them a little while to get that stuff public. So a few months ago, I think everyone was confident that AI was going to be a job destroyer. I am kind of shifting on that and agreeing more and more with Gartner now that it is going to be a job creator. I just saw a stat today that one of the things that AI predicted would a job class that it would destroy is radiologist, and
Mhm.
that AI could read an AI radiology result better than a human can. And somebody, I forget who said it, but he said it like a few years ago that profession will be eliminated. So it turns out that AI is reading a lot of X-rays and radiology results. Turns out that the FDA has approved a number of use cases around AI using this, and it's doing more and more than we've ever imagined. At the same time, there's a net shortage for real human radiologists, more than there ever has been before, and such a shortage that radiologists are now among the top three medical professionals in terms of
Yep.
salary. And so there, I think that is kind of changing the job front here, and so whether it's good or not is a whole different conversation.
Yes.
Um,
Yep.
I also saw this interesting thing about refrigeration and how much resistance there was to refrigeration when electricity was invented and we developed refrigerators. And most of us don't realize this, but there was a whole ice trade. Maybe Rob does because he lived in the Midwest. But a whole ice trade where they'd harvest ice off the Great Lakes, bring them down, put them in underground storage places, and then sell it.
Yep.
And that's why we have an ice box in the kitchen, because they would deliver ice every day and put that in there. And when they invented electricity, that whole profession was wiped out, and the resistance to that was huge. Only use God's ice. Don't use machine-made ice. There was a huge effort because there was such a huge infrastructure around delivering and distributing and cutting and harvesting ice that all got wiped out. And so with change comes disruption, comes resistance, and some of it's very legitimate, but it's inevitable. It's happening.
I
Then
think
just
a
go
very
ahead.
big difference is the speed here. It's a force multiplier. When we're talking about electricity, when you were talking about, GE versus Tesla versus Edison and all the, we were talking how many, months and years it would take to wire a city and create light bulbs and all the rest of it. We are now seeing, for people who like AI, for people who support AI, putting their hands in the air saying the way it works today is not how it worked yesterday. And the speed at which this is coming is something we've never seen before, and there isn't anybody saying, whoa, hold on a second. And that's what I think. Even if people would eventually come around to saying, I think this is going to be good for society in the long run, I think there are a lot of people going so fast for fear of getting left behind and making mistakes. One example is you've got a lot of CEOs and CIOs that are doing this to save on payroll. And we've had data come out over the last few months showing that the cost of the tokens is greater than the
Yep.
cost of the employees that they're getting rid of. So, again, if we go fast, we're going to make mistakes. And there have been plenty of technologies in my lifetime alone, in my 60 or so years on the planet, where the technology failed not because it was bad, but because it was implemented too quickly. And that's what I'm worried about.
Well, very, very legitimate concerns. The things technology generally makes things go faster, and AI, and we saw. In fact, we're seeing it this month in June. We had to do a early insider report because there was so much news happening. You used to wait the whole month. It was like, oh, we can't possibly wait a whole month to report all this news. So
Mhm.
things are just definitely happening faster. AI is definitely an accelerant. Again, whether it's good or bad is kind of irrelevant. It's happening. It's here. But one of the things like we covered in this story on the Insider Report was Cisco. They laid off 4,000 people last month in May, um, and they did not call it a riff. And I think this is really important. Cisco is having a great time with AI, right? Their stock is way up. They're selling tons of routers to all these new data centers and enterprises and hyperscalers. They all need Cisco gear. And so Cisco's having a great time with AI. They've decided that they need more AI skills, and so they did what they called a limited restructuring or an LR, not a RIF. They can't call it a RIF because they're actually increasing their payroll. Cisco used to have an old term about improving their hand. You put down a few cards, you pick up some new cards, and you try to improve your hand. And so yeah, I think they put down three cards and they're picking up four. But anyway, so there's definitely growth here, and it's definitely happening very quickly. But it doesn't matter whether it's good or bad. It's happening. We're not going to be able to turn it off.
Yeah, I think we can agree that it's shifting the job market. It'll take time to see what it's actually doing. The U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics came out with a very positive report on job growth. So, for the previous month. So it's going to take some time to actually see where things are going to shift most dramatically.
Well, let's move to another story here. We had a story about Trump's immigration policy change, which it isn't clear whether it's real or not. He's a master negotiator, so we never quite know what's real. But the policy change was that if you're applying for citizenship, you have to do it from abroad. And when I first heard it, it's like, okay, whatever, it doesn't affect me. But I didn't quite realize at the time how much it affects so many of the tech companies that we cover, who have employees that are here working toward their green cards and citizenship in the U.S. And that would mean that they would have to leave. And so I thought that was an interesting announcement and interesting repercussion. I don't know. I haven't heard a lot about it. I don't know if it's fading or if it's still real. Have you guys heard anything on this one?
Well, I have
Yep.
not. I've not heard any specific stories of employees that are looking to change their plans because of it. I know, without getting into politics here, because that's not going to help any of us. There's this expression that goes around about Trump, the taco expression. That without getting into the details implies that there isn't a decision that actually sticks ever. So I think people are taking a wait and see attitude. I don't think anybody's been declined for a green card yet. And I know that there's supposed to be oversight, although that's been pretty lacking during this administration. So I think most companies are just taking a wait and see. And I believe once people realize the impact that this will have on existing, that it'll probably be grandfathered and just affect new requests. So
That's an
it's
interesting angle,
something
the
to watch.
grandfathering angle. I have a feeling it's going to go away because I don't think that when it was announced, and I don't know, that they didn't realize the impact of the tech sector, and the tech sector is really what's
Mhm.
driving the U.S. economy right now. And so I don't think they'll do anything to disrupt the tech sector. So I suspect they'll either go away or current applicants will be grandfathered. I hadn't thought about the grandfathered angle. Rob, did you have
Yeah,
anything to add on this one?
yeah, I think the trickle down effects are really overlooked. Looking at the first step of impact seems to be what this administration does. So here in Georgia, someone reported on an auto battery plant in South Georgia that had several hundred people from, I think, South Korea there, and they loaded them up on a plane and shipped them out due to citizenship concerns or paperwork concerns. Those people were there to set up the plant and to train workers. They weren't there to stay. So, like, not thinking about like the root cause and then the trickle down or the downstream impacts is something that, it just like with AI, we're not going to feel it and really know the impacts for months or years. So, with something like this, yeah, it could be devastating. And it actually relates to a topic I had yesterday is, what is driving certain influences into the technology market and what's happening. And there seems to be major milestones or economic or geopolitical that are propelling things forward. And my conversation yesterday was what is driving AI? And it's really about, a technology race rather than customer demand. Customers didn't come out, 10 years ago and say, I need this. Cloud happened through virtualization, which was a necessity out of the 2010-ish downturn where you had to reduce cost from hardware, and that enabled virtualization and enabled cloud. And then, the next phase from that was, the pandemic that spurred all these virtual workspaces and conferencing and team messaging. And so I'm trying to figure out, what is propelling the AI economy, and it seems to be more so like a governmental political race for dominance rather than a pure a Byzantine technology. We're discovering where those white spaces are, where it needs to be applied, but I think the push came from outside of the enterprise demand when it really started. So that's kind of a diatribe, but it really what I'm looking at is the downstream and the why and how did that happen, and you can trace it back. There'll be some time before we get there.
Well, let's move on to another story here, but still AI. My gosh, uh, um, this was titled "Google's Turn" in the Insider Report. But for almost 2 years, when we came to AI, OpenAI was the undisputed leader. They were the one that was ahead of the pack, and one that Microsoft was working with, the one that most of us were using with ChatGPT, and so that's it. No one's going to be able to catch up. Then all of a sudden, earlier this year, Anthropic came out of nowhere with all of a sudden Claude Code and Microsoft switches to Claude Code. I mean, it's just like boom. Now Anthropic is in the leader, and in fact, I think Anthropic still holds the record for the fastest zero to whatever current run rate they're at, billion something growth record for the fastest growth of any company. So that Anthropic was the leader briefly. And then last month, in May, when this issue came out or covers, Google all of a sudden just popped, and they had the Google I/O, and they made a bunch of announcements, and they declared they want to be number one in AI, and they took swipes at OpenAI in many ways. They took a swipe at Microsoft Bing because they're completely adding AI to their search results, and they changed their search window. They haven't done that like in 30 years or something. No, 20 years. And then they're going after Microsoft Windows because they're relaunching Chromebook OS with new Android first, and it's a whole new, more robust operating system. They're going after Meta. They're going after Apple with the Chromebooks again because it's really going to be a threat to, I think, the iPads, excuse me, and the fits between an iPad Pro and their new Neo Apple Book. So anyway, they went after everybody, and gosh, I know I'm using Gemini a lot. They just came out of nowhere. So, David, do you have any thoughts on Google?
Well, I think is it appropriate to use the term that's popping up over here around orchestration? that it's no longer going to be the case of who's got the better engine, but who's got deeper claws into what you're doing. Couple of examples. Every time I use voice to text, which I use a lot for various different reasons now, because it's a lot faster to type, doing it that way, I've got a Zoom window that pops up on my screen that says it's automatically recording my notes so that all of my audio notes can be in one place. They're trying to go out of the program. The last couple of weeks, I've noticed in Gmail, because we're very heavy Gmail users, instead of just searching for a message in the top search of Gmail, I can now ask it a question. I can now ask it, find me the 6 emails that did this and find me what the response was. So I think what we're going to start to see is we're going to start to see these programs trying to figure out who's going to be in the lead coordinating all of them. And you've seen Cisco talk about better integration with Copilot. You've talked about Microsoft, as you point out, switching. I think what we're going to start to see is a fight for who has that first contact, because that's going to be the leader in who figures out where things go and ultimately how to monetize it. And you're right, there is no
Rob?
moat.
Yeah, I think just from a pure blocking and tackling perspective, it's a really clever approach. And exposure and education are really big here, in that people understanding what AI can and cannot do, what its risks are, what its potential benefits are. So getting it in front of people just from the leading browser, at least in the Western world, um, is a really smart play, and that will help people to become more familiar with the Google approach to AI and how things, as David just mentioned, work together. I think it's a really good approach to lay the groundwork for people to really get a handle on it going forward. Because kind of seeding the user base. Now, a lot of that may be consumer, but still that works its way into all facets of life, business as well.
And it's also a case of eating your own children before somebody else eats your own children. I mean,
Yeah.
Google used to own the market around, search and search engine optimization, and SEO is pretty much gone. AI killed it. So how does Google take that lead again? And this is one of the reasons why they're pushing their AI forward, because they'd rather eat their own kids than have somebody else do it.
Yeah, but that's going to be tricky because Google was their big revenue generator. Google Search was their revenue generator, and it isn't clear how that will work with the new forms of AI
Mhm.
enhanced search.
Mhm.
But I think what's really interesting here is, and David, you just touched on this, was there doesn't seem to be any moats in AI, and so you can switch. If you like ChatGPT better this week and switch to Gemini next week, no big deal. There's no switching costs. But Anthropic and OpenAI and Google are the top three, and only Google has a huge business, and all these other network effects going on. And so they've got the Chromebooks, they've got the G Suite, or you can't Workplace, whatever it's called. They've got the Chrome browser. They have all these things. They have devices. They have the
Yeah.
phones. They have all this stuff. The other companies don't have that, and so I think that Google may be kind of moving into this pole position, and I'm not sure it's going to switch back, at least not to Anthropic or OpenAI. I think that Google has too much momentum, too many other synergies. Now Microsoft's getting more serious. That'll be interesting. I'm not sure what Amazon's up to yet and becoming a top player, but I don't. I think this is a big change. I don't think we're going to see the other companies catch up.
You mentioned Amazon briefly. I'll tell you that I know that a number of people have switched from Echo, Alexa, to Alexa Plus, and have switched back because of how bad it
Yeah.
is. I know a lot of integration stopped working for me. I heard that from a lot of other tech heads as well, that it's just, what we're gaining is not as much as what we're losing. So again, the factor of speed and all of these things comes to matter. Well, when are we putting things out there that are just not ready yet?
Another
Yeah.
story here. The story was actually technically about Kyndryl and Solvinity, which I'm sure most of our readers have never heard of, but that wasn't the point. The point was really the story about the ambiguity around data sovereignty and what a cluster this is becoming. Um, I think we could call this the Greenland effect, but whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
data sovereignty has become much more important than it ever was before, and we're seeing a lot of countries being very concerned about control of that data, and this has been popping up in a number of ways. A few months ago, we talked about France insisting that the government not use Teams or Zoom because they wanted to use a French video system. The GDPR and data privacy requires a lot of data to be stored in various countries, but now the question is much more around who controls the data. And this isn't new either. In fact, in the US, this is why we were so concerned about TikTok, because we were afraid that TikTok could abuse its influence on American teens. And so we didn't want that to be owned by a Chinese company. And so the government insisted that it split it off and
Because no
create.
U.S. company has ever abused their position, right?
That's the point. And so now other countries are applying that to the U.S. There's a bit of a backlash here in Europe against a lot of American companies, and that's why I call it the Greenland effect, because they don't want their data to go necessarily to be under the control of an American company. The problem with that is that American companies pretty much dominate tech. And so there's this, well, how much, what do we do, what applies? And so it's really becoming a Pandora's box here of how do countries, what is the appropriate policy for a country that is concerned about this? And what are their options? And so it seems to be popping up more and more. And the U.S. Cloud Act made it really difficult because the U.S. Cloud Act said that a U.S. company has to help the U.S. government if they're told to. So I don't think there's an answer here, but I think it's really interesting because I think everyone is deer in the headlights, internationally and
Yeah.
domestically, about what to do with this. Any thoughts on this? Let's start off with Rob.
Yeah. So this is actually a conversation I had with several people at the M365 conference about 6 weeks ago or so in Orlando. Microsoft executives and representatives. We're talking about customer hesitation now based around this type of thing. And customers as well are building safeguards into their governance policies and programs to make sure that they have more control over who they need to share the data with, not only where it resides and where it goes. So it's definitely becoming an issue, and honestly, it has potential to further populate data centers around the world, which is it has its own controversies around it. So one thing again is going to trickle into another, and this could be a real problem on multiple fronts unless I think enterprises need to be more conservative than their governments because they don't know what their governments are going to do. So they don't ever want to be over that line and have to draw back. So the conservatism is something that we're really seeing increase because of this.
I do want to draw a distinction, David, between the parallel you had around some of these American companies like Microsoft, and Google and some of the others, and the situation that happened with TikTok in the U.S. The TikTok in China is showing teenagers educational videos and enlightening content, and in the U.S. they're showing people how to stick your tongue on a pole and not get it frozen. So there was
Right.
this real difference that different content was being sent to different parts of the world, and that's what brought about the fear and the yellow journalism around that. The situation with American companies is that they're just universally evil. They're bad to international companies. They're bad to overseas companies. They're bad to U.S. customers as well. So it's like, what are they doing with the data they're selling you? If the product is free, you're the product. So there was that different distinction that handling different cultures differently versus just not a company that you can trust. And I wish there were more companies that you could trust. So I don't know where this is going to go. I think nothing is going to really change in the world. We're not going to come closer and start singing Kumbaya until the administration in the US turns over in a couple of years. I think that's going to be the root
Yeah.
cause of trying to repair some of the damage that's happened internationally over the last couple of years. Again, without getting into politics, we're all living in one big world, and if we're going to take care of it, we're going to need to all be on the same page. And we're not that, and there's no sign of it becoming that for a while.
I think this can go a couple different ways. One way, and we're kind of seeing this now, is more local preference toward local providers. And
Yes.
so we're seeing, in the contact center space, you've got companies like Content Guru, which are based in the UK. You've got some companies in Germany. You've got a company in France, and so I think you're going to see some of these companies get more consideration than they used to because of where they're based. And so that's one thing that's going to happen. Now, a lot of these companies, though, are still using Amazon or Google or whatever as their underlying infrastructure, and that's going to be a little more trickier to sort out because there's not a lot of options on that. Um, another way this could play out is everything going back to prem, and that is there's a little bit of a trend on that right now. In fact, I was just listening to an interview with the CEO of IBM, and the mainframe business is way up, and it's like nobody saw that
Repatriation.
coming.
Yes.
What did you say, David?
Repatriation.
Repeat exactly. And the guy asked him, why is the mainframe business up? He goes, because you need a mainframe to run these giant workloads. He goes, well, shouldn't they be in the cloud? He goes, well, yeah, if you want to pay that, but those people don't want to pay that cost, and so they're bringing it into their own data centers. So you could bring things back into your own data centers, and that's another way to solve it. The third way to solve this, and this is what Cisco was trying to push with their Spark thing. And there's few ways of doing this, which is, having everything basically encrypted where only the client holds the keys and the data provider, the service provider doesn't have access to the data. That's an interesting model. The problem with that model is that tends to block out or lock out a lot of AI capabilities, and so which is both a good and bad thing. But I think that there's a legitimate driving interest for companies to take back total control over their data, and there's not that many ways that they can do it. Let's move to a real telecom enterprise comm story. David, this was your story, really. Microsoft retired all-together mode, and so I guess we have to all meet separately. Or explain what's going on here,
Yeah,
David.
let me share an image right now just to take a look at it, and hopefully it'll come through nice and clear. If not, I'll just fix it when we're doing the edit here. But
Full
this was,
disclaimer, I have to interrupt. I would never sit between the two of you. Like I could not survive this session.
but
No.
that's
Clearly,
perfectly
AI,
fair.
AI magic here.
Well, when we were all at home in a pandemic and wearing masks and worried about COVID and fighting those battles, there was a leapfrog in terms of things that we had never thought about before, and the technology advanced in response. We got virtual backgrounds, which most people hadn't really been using. Then we got video virtual backgrounds, where we were able to have live motion behind us. And then Microsoft, oddly, because Microsoft was a follower in this space most of the time. Zoom was typically the leader, and Google followed as well. Microsoft came out with this all together now or together now mode, where it took everybody in a call and all of a sudden placed them in an auditorium or in a classroom setting where everybody was sitting side by side. And it was weird because we couldn't look to the side.
Yeah.
It just kind of it would be great for a presenter to see his audience or a teacher to see his or her audience, but it was very weird for the participants. But it was unique, and they tried something new and they tried it fast, and kudos to them. But for the most part, to my knowledge and to my experience over the pandemic, people tried this once and they said, "Ooh, look, that's cute. Look at the way we can do it," and then pretty much shut it off and didn't use it. So Microsoft acknowledging that they only have so many dollars to spend on things that aren't named Copilot, came out with a small announcement last month that said, "We're discontinuing Together now. It's going away. It's going to be one of the relics that will not exist in Microsoft Teams anymore." And I think that's sort of a sad thing because I would have liked to have seen Microsoft get more credit for trying something, even if it wasn't a win. And I'd like to see them do more of that, to rather than say I'm throwing AI at a situation, just say that we're going to try something new and different and see if it improves the collaboration experience. So goodbye to this, and goodbye to, I guess it's the last vestige of the pandemic going away until Ebola kills all of us. What do you think, guys?
Yeah,
I,
I
I,
think they should get more credit for trying things. That was a very odd time, pandemic. There's a lot of trial and error to see what sticks, and this is just something that didn't work. I mean, I think that your point around the participant behavior is a good one, right? If you're expecting to look at someone when they're talking to them, and not have everyone looking forward, and you're not speaking with them the way you naturally would. It just didn't work. It just wasn't natural, but we learned from it. Google has a history of a lot of this type of stuff as well, trying things and pulling things, and they get hammered. They have a vestige of reputation of pulling out of
that's
things.
because they discontinue products that people love. That's the difference.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Yeah, just do a search for Google Graveyard and see what comes up.
yes,
yeah,
exactly. Well, I
but
think it makes sense to move away from it.
I'm kind of sorry to see it go. I loved the feature, although I'd be the first to admit I never used it. There was, and I wonder, why do they take things away when it's already done, it's already built? But I guess there's debt and there's obligations to it. So, but around that same time during the pandemic, Oprah did a celebrity interview. I forget who it was with, and they did side by side chairs with I think it was a fireplace, but it wasn't on in between them, and it was fake. It was during the pandemic. Nobody saw each other. Nobody was in the same room. They actually sent the same chair, so they had the same chairs to each person, and they actually they had it filmed right. And basically all this is a really fancy virtual dynamic background that both of you share, and it's which is why I think the fireplace was off, because I think it's basically the same background with the fireplace, but it would be harder to do it when the fireplace was on. But it's a great technology, great product, and I'm honestly sorry to see it go.
Hmm.
Microsoft, you mentioned Microsoft often follows, and so did others. And I don't remember if Cisco followed with this, but I know that Zoom did. They called it
Yeah.
impressive view, and no, excuse me, immersive view. They called it immersive view, and I don't know, because I don't ever use the feature, if it's still in Zoom or if they quietly took it away without us noticing it either. But Zoom's immersive scenes make you and your team feel like you are in the same room, even when you're not. See, and so the industry does tend to follow each other, and that's okay. That's the way things work sometimes. But I thought it was a great feature. I'm sorry to see it go.
It's still on Zoom's site. Why are we constantly trying to? I mean, a lot of your examples, Dave, were it sounded like telepresence, immersive telepresence, right? And that didn't work. I think there's a number of reasons for that, but it looks like there's still information on Zoom's site about it.
Yeah,
Good for
I'm not,
them.
at least I don't have it on my features. I got I got side by sides, I got split screens, I got everything else, but I don't seem to have it. So,
That's the
maybe,
other point, Dave. Yeah, in the green room before we started the recording here, people just want it to work. They don't want to futz with the all the features and everything. They just want consistency, so they have confidence in what they're doing. So to kind of streamline it a little bit, which is what's mentioned in the recap here from Talking Points, it just makes sense to me. I'm gonna have to disagree with Dave.
sounds good. Next,
Well, with
Dave?
that, then let's just change subjects. Then if we're going to be that way about it, let's
All
go
right.
to Zendesk. Zendesk is one of these companies that I don't really follow that closely, but apparently they want me to, because they announced that they're a contact center company now. They had their event, Zendesk Relate, and they made a bunch of announcements, and they had a bunch of interesting folks at their event. I thought this was kind of interesting. Rob, do you cover contact center very closely?
Just close enough to be dangerous. And one of the things that we've been kind of kicking around is, these frontline type of workers are actually can be contact center agents, right? Your technicians and what have you, your IT people that are running around. So I haven't really looked into the functionality, but the concept of it makes sense to me.
So to me, this is a bit like Salesforce, right? I mean, Salesforce is a CRM, Zendesk is a ticketing system, but software apocalypse, which is a bit, they're not, it's not an apocalypse, but there's a software reset going on. So to me, it's a bit of a pivot, and maybe a logical and legitimate pivot, but a pivot, and I think it's an interesting twist. Now, I think that if you look at the contact center companies like uh, Nice and Genesis,
Mhm.
Five9, they have the pure plays, the pure plays, and even Talk to Us, these are all leaders in the Magic Quadrant. They're all pure plays, they're all 100%. Every employee is focused on customer service, customer experience. I don't know how a company like Salesforce and Zendesk are going to be able to compete with that because they are very, and Microsoft too, they're very distracted with a lot of things going on. So that hasn't stopped them before, and so we'll see what they do. But contact center is a not something you just become overnight.
Well, Dave, let me be devil's advocate with you there for a second. Just out of curiosity, if I get an account on AWS Connect and I put an AI agent, only AI agent, on top of it, why can't I just be a contact center provider? Is it really harder than that? Now it won't be a good one. Okay, you escalate and there's nobody there. Let's not talk about that. Let's not talk about ServiceNow integration or anything else. Just if I want to call myself a contact center, if I buy the compute from somebody who's selling it and I buy the module from somebody who's selling it and I put an AI agent in the front of it, can I be a contact center tomorrow?
That's a great question, and it gets down into definitions. And here's where I kind of agree with Gartner. Gartner has when they do their Magic Quadrant, they have a very specific set of definitions of what companies can be in the Magic Quadrant for a contact center. And it's always been a very uh, contentious rule. But one of the rules is that 50% of their revenue has to be associated with inbound voice. And it's very
Okay.
contentious because a lot of people, well, voice, that's expensive. I want to use my bots. I want to do other things. And Microsoft came out with digital contact center a few years ago that was never eligible because it was digital contact center, didn't have voice. And I've talked to the Gartner guys about this, and I said, this is a really strict rule. You're blocking out a lot of good companies from your Magic Quadrant. And they said, well, we're at a point where you cannot automate everything, and you have to be able to escalate to a human. And we think that's a big part of the skill set. And so that's our rule. And it's like, okay, I actually get that. Because there are lots of companies that can solve this thing without escalating to a human. Once you escalate to a human, it introduces PSTN complexity, it introduces call queuing, call routing, it introduces all kinds of specialized skills, specialized ways of managing agents, whole set of requirements that it's not just as simple as taking a call, right? And so I think that's the basic requirement. What we're seeing now is companies like Salesforce and companies like Zendesk that have been fairly good at digital contact center are now trying to handle voice. And I've written about this with the Salesforce coverage. They're trying to build it from scratch, and they could have acquired something like 8x8 or something like that, but they decided to build it from scratch. It's going to take them years to get a global, reliable network, Five9 network. It's going to take them years to get FedRAMP certified. It's going to take them, years to get all this stuff in place, channels and all this, everything they need to make enterprise class contact center. And they've even admitted that. They said, you might want to start off with this if you're not that serious about contact center. But and so that's the answer to your question there.
Well, they're probably seeing, in their proprietary information, the number of cases that they can handle digitally, and they have to do this, or they're losing business, or they're losing users, or what have you. So, in every facet of things that I've been looking at, is automation doesn't work for a fair percentage of, whether it's 30% of inquiries or what have you, where you have an escalation or there's some kind of nuance or complication or sensitivity where a human has to kind of come in and be that touch point. So they're probably seeing something as, a lost opportunity, or just losing business because they can't handle that.
That's
There's something they're
exactly what
not
it is.
telling us. Yeah,
It used to be, contact center. I've always said contact center was CRM's bitch, right? And so basically, the contact center agent would manually populate the CRM with who called, why they called, all that stuff. And now with AI, that stuff is happening automatically, and then AI is listening to the whole conversation, and they're realizing there's more gold in that conversation that's happening in the contact center than the erroneous data that the agent manually entered. And so
selective
so
data.
now,
Yeah,
like to your point, we need that goal, we need that. We're going to go get that conversation, and it's like, well, okay, but with it comes a lot of
yes,
responsibility and obligations. And a company like Salesforce can obviously do it. They have the skills, they have the money, they have the talent. There's no question they can do it. The question is how long will it take till they get there? And every year that they're improving with the basics and trying to figure out how to answer a phone call, NICE is evolving as well and doing their thing. And so that's the concern I've got there. That's why I don't understand why they didn't do an acquisition. But anyway, enough on that one. So let's wrap up with just one more story here out of the Insider. We had coverage of HP Poly increasing their prices. Increasing their prices. Are they crazy or are they the first? David, what are
Who?
your thoughts?
What company are we talking about? Who?
HP Poly. I think you know them.
They
Maybe
still
you know
they
them as Polycom. I don't know.
I would say probably about 5 or 6 times a week I look at a company listed and I say, wow, they're still in business. You wouldn't know from all the people on LinkedIn that are saying that they're leaving. But in any case, I in this one particular case, I don't have a blame for them. The cost of oil, the cost of gas is going up in everything. If you haven't bought some milk or some cheese or some bread in the last few weeks, don't be stunned by the fact that they're all raising it. For some reason, they raise in dollar increments. I'm not exactly sure I understand that. We got rid of the penny, but we didn't get rid of the quarters or anything. But in any case, they're the first. I know that some of the other technology suppliers, I think Crestron and a few others, are announcing price increases. It's inevitable, with what's going on in the world, with what's going on in the Strait of Hormuz. I think they're just the first to announce it, and I don't think it's going to have that much of an impact on the economy from a poly standpoint because I don't think anybody's buying that much poly anymore.
Rob, do you think
uh,
prices are going up in general or just hardware?
I think in general. I mean, it's just the way things are trending. People actually expect it now. It's not that much of a disappointment as it is a reality of the state of things. And the real problem is once they go up, they very rarely come down. So that's just the trend.
So both of you are expecting general price increases in the enterprise comm sector across the board.
Yeah.
It's a bad sign for the economy because we're expecting general price increases. We're expecting because of that, companies are going to start belt tightening. So there's going to be less spend and less activity going on. At least that's what I'm expecting. So I've got a lot of companies saying, I'd really love to work on this project, but we're not doing anything right now. So I think the economy is going to start, coming to a bit of a grinding halt unless we fix some of the geopolitical situations in the world.
Well, that means anybody who has a cost advantage will have an advantage in general. I know some of the providers, for example, I think Dialpad is touting that they have cost advantage with their small language models when it comes to transcription. So when they told me that, it's like, yeah, who cares? But maybe that's going to be a secret weapon for for them and other companies that have some sort of cost advantage. With that, let's go ahead and wrap this up. David, where are you off to?
Well, you're watching this. I'm in Las Vegas at Infocom. I'm walking the halls, and my report will be on the first one anyway. This is going to air on, they're going to post on Wednesday. My report will be on Monday. The first feelings from the show, some of the conversations that I'm having with some of the vendors. We're
Oh, so
talking
your report comes before this report. That's just great. Just
the other
great.
way around. Nope. So nope, 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 nope. It's the other way
Oh,
around.
okay, okay.
This
All right.
one's on Wednesday, and then the following Monday
Oh, the
after.
following month. You didn't say fall. Okay,
Yeah,
all right, good.
following Monday. So yeah, I will have something out there, and I already know some amazing news that we're going to be reporting on. That's going to be some pretty big deals. So definitely stay tuned for
And
that.
Infocom is in Vegas?
Infocom goes back and forth between Vegas and Orlando every year, and this is a
That's a
Vegas.
great time of year to be in Vegas.
Yeah.
It should be what, 115 or so? That'll be great.
The
Uh,
old the old wait the old joke that I make about that is if you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning at Infocom and you're not sure whether it's in Orlando or in Vegas here, open the curtain to your hotel room, and if you can see out it, you're in Vegas. If it's full of condensation and you can't see out, you're in Orlando.
That's about right. That's
What
about
about
right.
you, Rob? You got any travel coming up?
Well, no, actually, I had previously planned a staycation with my kids. So we will be doing the pool and some day trips. They want to go to the Whistle Stop Cafe, which was a centerpiece a set for Fried Green Tomatoes, if you remember that movie. They want to go there. So we're going to do some driving around. I will
Oh,
be
what's the
watching all
expression
the
for
news.
fragrant tomatoes? Uh, it's
Mary
what's
Stuart
the
Masterson and I'm forgetting, but it's
I
a
can't. It's
90s
not
movie.
cowabunga. It's something different. It's
AG,
oh
AG
well.
something or other. But yeah, we'll have to watch it again before we go. But I'll be watching all the news uh, during the week.
Excellent. Yeah, I got a little bit of a break too here, break as well. I'm planning on hitting the nice event in London coming up, and quite possibly the Infobip session in Croatia, if I can pull that one off. So, but good. So good
And
luck in
Dave,
Vegas, and
We already have as you pointed out, a first edition Insider Report. First half of June is already out there, and we're working
yeah.
on the second half right now.
Does that mean we do two videos this time, or one video for Inside?
We'll still do the one video in July for June.
So, Rob, I can't thank you enough for joining us. It's always great to have somebody on here because David doesn't know what he's talking about. So this is fantastic. But David, have a great time in Vegas, and for all of you, thank you for watching.
Thank you guys. It was a lot of fun. Cheers.